To the point of my colleague. Yeah.
I want to add something.
Yeah.
Are you aware that the current president of Mali, when they were looking for him to kill him,
Yes.
it is in Algeria that hid him. He actually hid in Algeria.
Okay.
Yes, this is the current leader. He was supported
Assimi
by
Goïta.
Algeria and he hid in Algeria.
No, more so. When you look at what I said this, but maybe it didn't come out the way I wanted it to come out. If you permit me just
Sure.
Niger, ECOWAS was going to go into Niger and cause a regime, a reversal.
Yes.
And it is Algeria which prevailed again through high-level diplomatic engagement. Some of these things are not talked about.
They're not in public.
High-level diplomatic engagement, the powerful peace broker that Algeria has been, they engaged and prevailed upon ECOWAS not to do what they knew would.
The Pan-African Weekly Round Table, Andrew Rumba Batsebe, your speaker, and as usual, with my usual suspects, my elder brother Daniel Garama. The other third name is what?
Karuchiko.
Karuchiko.
You will get used to it. So the proper introduction is, this is Comrade Rugarama Daniel Karuchiko.
Karuchiko.
Yes. And you have to be hailing
nice.
from.
Kakachiko.
You come from.
Karuchiko.
Yes,
But your name is Karuchiko.
Look, I am. Of course, I was baptized Rugarama. I mean Daniel by force. It wasn't.
me was baptized
It wasn't by consensus. But you let it pass. So this is, you are now talking to Comrade Rugarama Daniel, son of Rugarama, grandson of Karchiko, great-grandson of Rugarama, great-great-grandson of Rukusia, great-great-great-great-grandson the oldest now of all of them, called Kassia.
To them.
So, but
Always the same clan.
so
eh?
you are Karukiko. Of course, it has to be the same.
It has to be the same
It
clan.
has to be the same.
You can't change.
You can't change.
Yes.
Karukiko. So Daniel Garama Karukiko.
Karchiko.
Ga is not yours. Your name is Karukiko, isn't it?
Call it that, it will pass.
What is his third name?
Me, Thomas? Mari?
What?
Oh, him?
Hey,
Oh, I thought you were asking me.
His third name is what?
Kakiko. Yeah, you took me by surprise. I would have written it and found it. Yeah.
Okay, you repeat. Karukiko.
Garkiko.
I said the car, not
Ka. Kakiko. Kakiko.
No. I said the Karukiko.
Karukiko.
Aha,
You
very
are
good.
now coming.
Karukiko.
Yeah.
Okay.
I want you to learn African names. Karukiko.
What?
Karukiko.
K-A-R.
Kiko. Something like this. Karukiko. Karukiko.
You are both.
I'm glad they gave me just Mutatino. But that being said, I'm also named Thomas, and for my culture, for my people, they believe that Thomas is the one that only trusts what he can see.
Yeah.
And so it's also something I've developed in my life that I don't know, but it's definitely, I don't believe something if I haven't seen it, you know? So that's why also journalism is a good thing for me, because people talk, but me, I want to go to the source.
You want to
Where
go to
is the source?
Thomas Sankara, Thomas Lesafri Rutatina.
Yes. And you add Roger and Gilbert, which has the name of my grandfathers that I
Roger
carry
and
with
Gilbert.
me. Yeah, it's Thomas, Marie, Roger, Gilbert.
Thank you so much, comrade, my dear comrades, my elders. This morning we are discussing the Algeria-Mali Altercations. What could be the underlying factors? The tension between Algeria and Mali stem from a complex mix of historical, political, security, and geopolitical factors. And here are a few I can give. Number one, security and terrorism concerns. Algeria's counter-terrorism role. Algeria has historically played a major role in counter-terrorism in the Sahel, particularly after its own brutal civil war in the 1990s. it has always opposed foreign military intervention and prefers regional solutions. Mali's shift towards Russia. Number 2, that could be the underlying factor between the altercation between Algeria and Mali. The number 2 underlying factor could be Mali's shift towards Russia. Mali's transitional military government since the 2021 coup has aligned more closely with Russia and the Wagner Group, distancing itself from Western and regional powers, including Algeria. Number 3 issue could be raising jihadist threats. Northern Mali continues to be a hotspot for jihadist groups linked to Al-Qaeda and ISIS. Algeria, which shares a long border with Mali, is concerned about the spillover of violence. Number 2, the Tuareg question. Algeria has historically acted as a mediator between the Malian government and the Tuareg separatist rebels in northern Mali, who seek autonomy or independence. Algeria brokered this agreement between the Malian government and northern rebel groups. Mali's military junta has shown reluctance to implement the agreement, frustrating Algeria. Geopolitical shifts. Algeria is wary of increasing Russian and Wagner influence in Mali, which may undermine its regional clout. The departure of French troops from Mali has created a power vacuum that Algeria fears could destabilize the entire Sahel region. Mali's military rulers have grown suspicious of Algeria's mediation, accusing it of favoring the rebels. Number 4, border clashes and accusations. There have been instances where Mali accused Algeria of supporting or harboring rebel groups, and Algeria has accused Mali of failing to control its territory. Algeria recently summoned Mali's ambassador over security concerns, where Mali has been critical of Algeria's continued dialogue with northern rebel groups. Comrade Rugarama, the historian, I want to begin with you. Give us a context of the underlying factors between Mali and Algeria altercations. But also in this very show, we want also to dig deeper and contextualize the Pan-African credentials of Algeria in regards to the Sahel region, but also Africa at large. So I want you to go broader. Don't just tie yourself on this, but let's analyze the Algeria as a country historically. Of course, these issues now come in because of the activities that they've been handling and the issues that they've been handling in the Sahel region. I remember Algeria is now the biggest country in Africa. It used to be Sudan before it was divided.
By size?
Yeah, by size, yes. Algeria now is number 1. It's the biggest country in Africa.
That's
so
true.
it is the biggest country in the Sahel region.
And one of the biggest in terms of military. One of the biggest powerhouses militarily on the African continent.
Algeria?
Yes, one of them. Not necessarily the first, but one of, if you are counting, say, 7 militarily powerful countries on the African continent. Certainly some of these things are subject to debate because we have seen even the most powerful being defeated in other areas. You know what happened to America when they were in Somalia. We know what happened to Britain when they went to Falklands.
But they have serious credentials.
So at the end of the day, there are certain factors which they use to determine the might of an army. That aside, Comrade Speaker, sir, my young brother Irumba, I send you salutations.
Thank you.
Our son on the camera, when he keeps listening to some of this stuff, I'm very sure he's not going, even now, he can't be in the same category as his peers. And my young brother again here, Comrade Safari Rutatina, I extend my salutations to you. And our esteemed viewers, wherever you are, we do not take you for granted. We thank you and we ask you to keep with us as we keep improving
Share,
ourselves.
subscribe, comment on these
Yes,
shows.
you do all those things that
Give us your views, we shall adjust.
Do all those things
And
you kids do.
we are interested in your views because it is your views that make this show a better show. Comrade Speaker, sir, the question itself poses more questions than the answers. Probably, how we come to this point is what is very important. But we also need to look at which you actually partly captured in your preamble, that at the close of March this year,
You're going to kill this French man with Rolex. The man is eating Rolex every.
that at the
He has
close,
loved the African, Rolex.
that at the close of this month of March, the Mali machine, which they have now named drone, was patrolling the border with Algeria, and Algeria claims that it had extended into its territory by about 2 kilometers. There are also claims again from Mali that actually that is not true, that it was well within her territory, and for very strange reasons, Algeria shot down using a missile
They are
drone.
Malian drone.
And that in itself sparked very many things. One, immediately the Mali government recalled the ambassador from Algeria, and also the Algerian government recalled her ambassador from Mali. That they were not done, because in the same space we had the members who have formed themselves into a coalition, that is Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. They also equally, in solidarity with their comrade Mali, recalled their ambassadors from Algiers. As if not to be undone, the usual diplomatic comments that are usually given when such things happen never happened, but we had very powerful statements which were pointing to a possible war if that was going to be necessary, including our revolutionary young brother Traore making it categorically clear that gone are the days when the Sahel region was a beehive of the colonial activities. And I think in this particular regard, referring to France, because all that region was French West Africa. The trends have been that Algeria is rumored to have increased the troop activities, amassing troops across the border, but at the same time also getting ready, carrying out military exercises. These two countries, especially Mali and Algeria, have got a history. And that history is something that we fear as political analysts and historians that is being threatened. It has a history where the Tuareg, it depends on how one pronounces it, who are a little bit white, if you like, in color, and who tend to be towards the strip and border of Algeria, have been, in a manner of speaking, carrying out rebel activities, because right from the 90s they declared themselves to independent away from the mainstream Mali, and Algeria has been carrying out mediation role. The Tuareg, who are nomads, they are always moving from place to place within that part of the country, which is by and large a Malian territory, but they have declared it to be independent away from the mainstream Bamako administration.
As a what?
This, therefore, has created time and again the intervention, because the Sahel region is a region that is characterized by all manner of rebel activities, call them jihadists. Algeria itself has been fighting jihadists even in her own territory. They fear, therefore, that a spillover from Mali to infuse into Algeria would compromise the security of Algeria. These two countries, we must also underscore the point that they are also former colonies of France. Algeria itself fought the French to rid.
This people colonized Algeria.
Yes, they were
the most colonized country in French history has been Algeria. It was not even a colony; it was French department. They called it.
French department.
The same one that Paris or the one I grew up in. Yeah?
There is a department of agriculture in Uganda.
No,
so Algeria was
the
your
French
department.
there's a Toro region. Algeria was part of France. Mali, Senegal, they were colonies, but Algeria was considered part of
you
France.
can imagine that's special.
2 million settlers.
That special position. And because given the fact, by the way, even when you go to France now, what my brother Safri is talking about, when you go to France now, you will find that there are many Algerians, the likes of Zinedine Zidane, who may not easily be differentiated from the actual French people. And because of the French policy of assimilation, and due to the high degree of similarity in color, and by the way, note this, it is not true to say that all Algerians are actually brown. No, they are Algerians who are dark-skinned, much as there are Mali people who are also brown, who tend to look like majority Algerians. So on the account of color, and due to the 1884-85 Berlin Conference, the way the boundaries were arbitrarily drawn, you may have had time to give somebody a nationality on the account of color. Having said that, the historization and the background I have given you about Algeria and Mali, and the fact that both of these countries were actually former colonies of France. I may say former because we shall come to a point where we are going to realize that actually France, in a manner of speaking, no longer holds the key the way they used to hold in the past. Now, the Algeria as a country has got a very unique position on the African continent.
Why?
Algeria, although it looks like it is occupied by people who are mostly brown, it has produced some of the most passionate Pan-Africanists whose agenda to liberate the African continent has not been questioned by anybody. It produced the likes of Ben Bera, who during his time with Abdul Gamal Nasser of Egypt, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Olympiacos, the Amilcar Cabral were at the helm, the Julius Nyereres were at the helm by 1963 of establishing the Organization of African Unity. Algeria is one of the very few countries on the African continent when Nelson Mandela could not get any passport during his fight against apartheid. They gave Nelson Mandela, the icon of fight against apartheid, a passport. Algeria, probably even the only one. Algeria was the country. I'm trying to show you therefore the Pan-African credentials of Algeria and as to whether Algeria, we should now think for whatever reasons that those Pan-African credentials, Algeria has lost them or not. Or there are other factors as to why what is happening, and then we also interrogate the same. Algeria, away from the giving birth to the likes of the Ben Bera, away from the historical mission, like not just liberating herself from the shackles of the French, but also making sure that the rest of the continent is liberated. They are neighboring people like the Moroccans. Morocco has twice applied to be a member of the European Union. Algeria sorry, has never done such a thing. Instead, it has stayed steadfast. It has made its contribution to the African Development Bank. It has made its contribution to the African Union, and it is still growing. Algeria has extended scholarships to her neighbors, including even Uganda. We benefit from a number of scholarships extended by Algeria in the sector of oil, sector of agriculture, sector of manufacturing, sector of aeronautics, to mention but a few. The same Algeria is one other country that has supported, of course I will not agree with my brother Rusafri here, but that is fine.
But for the rest,
the rest is okay. Now what I'm going to say, I know we are not going to agree, but it's okay. That's the hallmark of debate.
Where did you disagree, Mr. Rusafri?
This is where we disagree. I do hold the fact that Algeria's cause in standing with the position of African Union on the cause of the Porceria, the Sahrawi Republic, that Sahrawi Republic is an independent country, is correct. Algeria has put at the disposal of the people of Sahrawi the resources to make sure that they achieve their final autonomy.
But comrade, by supporting Sahrawi to divide itself further, Algeria helping it, and we now dividing Africa further, yet we are actually trying to unite Africa into one country.
That is how we agreed to achieve unification of Africa. How we agreed to achieve the unification of Africa is not like what America did. America, they deceived either that they have purchased territory, that they claim they purchased Guantanamo from the Spaniards. They never purchased it from the Cubans. That's the Cuban territory. And Cuba has never sold her territory to anybody. They just unilaterally occupied it, struck a deal with Spain, which had no rights over Guantanamo, and they did what they did. The position of African Union.
Spain said we have sold to you this part of us.
Absolutely. And you can.
And America said we have both.
You know what they are doing from there. So the position of Africa on the unity of Africa is that we are going to get to unite through regional economic blocks, but not military might. Because if that is going to be the case, then you are going to have the Ethiopia coming down to Somalia, coming down to Eritrea, coming down and occupying all those and making them one. You are going to have the likes, because now Uganda is a power, we shall go to Burundi, we shall go to all these, and then we bring them on board. And when they talk, we say we are going to make your life a living here. So that's not how we are going to unite Africa. Well, how we are going to unite Africa is through economic regional blocks. And finally, you know that we agreed also to go through Africa Continental Free Trade Area. And that Africa Continental Free Trade Area to complement the efforts already being made through ECOWAS, being made through EACA, being made through IGAD, so that we can now come together. And when we intensify and increase the intra-trade among the African countries, we shall be stepping up the integration. Algeria reached a point, as we talk, where it established itself as a power peacemaker, especially in the region of her neighbors, the West Africa, to complement the efforts. Because if it was not Algeria, I want to tell you that we would have had ECOWAS go into the Niger, go into Burkina Faso, so that they restore the civil or if you want to call them, civil governments, because these are military governments. For the thought, because ECOWAS had determined that they were going to go there and restore the civilian government. Now it is Algeria weighing in, because Algeria had invested quite a lot of her time in making sure that they stabilize the neighbors, create peace, especially in Mali and Niger. They said we can handle it differently. So this time, therefore, what is happening is creating a situation where Algeria is probably looking at the activities in Niger, in Mali, in Bamako as a stab in the back. That with all that we have gone through with you, it shouldn't be, because there are other major projects like the pipeline, oil pipeline, that is going through some of these countries, which will be supplying the rest of the other continent. So when you look at what therefore finally happened in the three countries that you have talked about, the Confederation of the Sahel countries, you realize that so much has changed. The political climate is no longer that one of the civilian government, it is for a military government. And because of that, there were accusations by these respective countries that the Western capitals, especially France, is manifesting herself in the economics, social culture of our countries, and we cannot keep this one obtaining. We must do away with it. They have now started looking to Russia. As you remember, they actually had a high-level meeting with, is it the foreign minister?
The foreign minister of Mali, Burkina, and Niger.
Yes, they went to Moscow, and they met a high-level team. Probably even met the president, Lavrov, yes.
Lavrov.
And the cooperation became immediate. Russia is now directly involved without asking so many questions, without the arrogance of the Western Europe as we know them. They are heavily involved in the military architecture of the Sahel countries. They are involved in the economic activities of the Sahel, all those countries that we have talked about, including our Mali. Now, to the extent that even the drone which was shot down, the patrolling was Russian, and it was being controlled by...
That's my question.
Yes, it was also being controlled by Russia. Algeria, remember, yes, the drone.
And it was at the border of Algeria.
Remember, but also that even Algeria also has got technology which is highly Russian. Now, the allegiance, the role, my fear here is, and this is my analysis, my fear here now is that since there is a shift of allegiance, these brothers and sisters from Mali tending to look at Algeria, hitherto a country that was brokering peace, this time probably as an enemy and a competitor, explaining that they support the Tuareg rebels is a stab in the back that Algeria is talking about. Could it be therefore, when we are analyzing, that because of the shift in allegiance, because Mali is getting the intelligence report using the technology of Russia, the integration of the Russian military with the military of Mali, supplying them because they bought a lot of drones and military hardware from Turkey and Russia. Could it be therefore that now they are stepping up and creating a certain level of competition that Algeria does not like? Or simply it is that these countries, especially the Confederation of the Sahel region, Mali, Niger and Burkina Faso, are a little bit young and arrogant in terms of the political maturity, that instead of taking certain situations with a high level of maturity, they blow certain things out of proportion. These are some of the things me and you and the public out there need to study deeply, and then we can be able to give meaningful explanation to the rest of the public and create a kind of harmony that we need on the African continent, because going forward, Africa is highly polarized. We are in a situation where a lot of wars have been created. The resolutions of African Union inter alia that the guns are going to be silent, they are instead increasing. The last thing we need on the African continent is, for instance, a full-blown war between Algeria and the Sahel states. Because when you attack Mali, you would have attacked, according to their agreement, Niger and also
you have attacked the entire Sahel
Burkina Faso
region.
So we
You
need
attack one of them, you have attacked all of us.
And you see, on the African continent, on the African continent, it has not been like that. We are not like the NATO, which actualizes some of these arguments which they made. For us, we have been a highly divided continent that even if they are attacking my neighbor, chances that me, an immediate neighbor, I am not likely to go and intervene because I look at it as their own problem. But now we are having the Confederation of the Sahel region, whereby immediately, just droning, bringing down a drone of Mali, brought out the wrath of Burkina Faso and Niger, including but not limited to recalling their ambassadors, but also to making sure that the airspace to both military and civilian operations is cut off.
Stand still.
We are in a situation whereby we are at the brink of a war if we do not restrain ourselves, and we in the Pan-African ranks have got a duty to speak to the powers such that we can have peace.
I have ever been told that the airspaces of other countries like Burkina Faso, Niger and so on are open to Algeria and vice versa. It's only the ambassadors that they recall, but the airspace is
Remained open, eh?
yeah, remain open. It's only flying between Algeria and Mali that is closed, but the other countries are still.
It's also about the littoral. Where does the weapons that are used in the Sahel come from, right? So we know that from the government, as you said, they get drawn from Turkey, from Iran, from Russia. But when you bring such military material, you also pass agreement with those that produce it. And I think also Algeria is concerned that some of those agreements involve getting information on the Algerian side of the borders, which is a legitimate concern. You wouldn't want, imagine France France have done that actually. France use Emiratis to sell weapons to people in Sudan. Now the information that the Emiratis will collect will be shared with the French, and that is highly problematic for sovereignty. So I do think like here we are in a situations where both sides as a serious claim. But as you said, as my colleague said, my comrade said, Pan-African need to be the forces that gonna breach, that have to breach this. Did you know Amilcar Cabral, what Amilcar Cabral used to say about Algeria? In 1960, and that's one of my favorite Pan-African quotes, so all of you listen to this one. In the 1960s, he says, Christians go to Vatican, Muslim goes to Mecca, Revolutionary and Pan-African, we go to Alger.
Yeah,
Algeria was the capital
yes, of Pan-Africanism.
of Pan-Africanism in the 60s, for sure. If I give you the list, when I think of Algeria, you see I'm even getting goose because I like history. No, I like history a lot.
Yeah, man.
It's real.
You check whether they are good.
Absolutely.
Because when we speak of
The
revolution,
hair is standing up.
the revolutionary of the 60s, those were my guys. Like Nelson Mandela, Che Guevara,
Yes.
Samuel Machel, even Yarire went there, but he was already president.
Yes.
They were all
Olympiacos.
Olympio.
Gamar.
They would go.
Amilcar Cabral, Kwame Nkrumah. Let me tell you, like the history of Mali and Alger cannot be separated. At the moment where the Algerian freedom fighters are winning the French, right? The French come with new strategy and a lot of new style of
There was Ben Bella from Algeria.
from Ben Bella.
Yeah.
They come with a lot of way to torture Algerian freedom fighters. So they're losing numbers. So as soon as Mali and Senegal and Guinea and Ghana got independent, as soon the FLN, which is still in government today, so which was the freedom fighters of Algeria, sent the men to go and negotiate with Kwame Nkrumah and Modibo Keïta the opening of what they call the fifth front line, right? Which is going to push the French outside of Algeria. That fifth front line was the border between Mali and Alger that we're speaking about today. That man was Frantz Fanon. Frantz Fanon himself, clearly the biggest revolutionary psychologist of his time. Frantz Fanon himself went to speak to Modibo Keïta, went to speak to Kwame Nkrumah, went to speak to
Maybe you remind the Pan-Africans what Frank Fanon's best book was.
The Riches of the Earth.
The records.
The Riches of the Earth. Les Dames de la Terre. So he went to all those capitals to. He was writing in French, so it's not just me imposing my French here.
Okay. I'm also learning French.
Frantz Fanon came to speak to Modibo Keïta, Kwame Nkrumah, and Touré of Guinea, right? He went to speak to the three of them, to Sékou Touré, to get like help, and they helped him, and he managed to restart the fifth front. But unfortunately, he died before in 1961. But you can
Around
imagine.
the same time with Patrice Lumumba, yes.
Yeah, almost same months. So it is quite clear. It is quite clear that Algeria knows what it owns to Mali. Mali knows what they own to Algeria. Right? The two are true. Right?
They should be the last people to fight.
Yeah, voilà. So that is why, like, my first point here is to say I like this topic because, like, it is easier for us Pan-Africans to highlight neo-colonialist power. It is easier for us Pan-African to show that how the string of the economy are pulled by few that try to divide the continent. Those are our normal training as Pan-African. That's what we know how to do, right? But when it comes to a conflict like this, between two serious Pan-African credentials, because if I have to speak of Algerian Pan-African credential, it dates back from even before independence. Even before independence, those guys were Pan-African in the way they have to liberate themselves. And they consider like the liberation of Africa, even even before their own liberation at the time, because they knew it will help them to fund the French. They knew that if the French lose in Senegal, Mali, Madagascar, they have more chance to defeat them in Alger. So they were really like strategic leaders. As soon as they negotiate the agreement between France and Algeria for independence, that negotiation went really well. They took over everything that the French wanted to protect. They kick out French nuclear interests that used to be bombing Algeria with the nuclear bomb. We used to bomb Algeria with nuclear bombs. We often don't speak about those things. We think the bombs were only sent to Hiroshima and Nagasaki. It's more complicated than that. Much more complicated than that. So
France used to.
So we developed our bomb
When you say we,
with
I want
Africans.
to say France.
The French, yeah. The French
You
developed.
people, France,
No,
you-
I have to assume that's the history also. That's why before me, I don't assume what they do today,
You
because
are
today I
not
know what
there.
I'm doing.
Yeah.
But the French did develop the atomic bomb in Algeria, so that's how they got independence from USSR and USA. And at the moment of independence, they refused to give the infrastructure to the Algerian government, which a lot of negotiation happened there, and they won. So when you think of someone like Boumediene, as soon as he seized power, Boumediene, straight after Ben Bella, first president of Algeria, come Boumediene, and Boumediene is the army leader. He's a revolutionary army leader. He was sitting in Algeria for the war, and he was a really successful leader as a freedom fighter, right? When Boumediene seized power, he nationalized every single French interest, including the gas and the petrol. The gas of Algeria today is one of the most interesting geopolitical cards Africa has. Because right now, all Western Europe try to cut the energy influence that Russia have on them. All Western Europe is trying to find other source of energy. And that energy is where? In Algeria. Algeria is the 10th biggest producer of gas in the entire world. He also produces oil, and he has that project, as you said, between Nigeria, Algeria, to send the petrol, right? So if Europe want to get independent from Russian energy, which they want for political reason, it pass by Algeria. It passed by an agreement with Algeria and an agreement with West Africa in general to get the petrol and the gas to support their autonomous policy from Russia. So Algeria is a really key actors in geopolitics, right? Really key actors. So as I said, a complicated topic for Pan-African because both sides have strong Pan-African credential. Both Modibo in Mali and Algeria, right? Getting back to the point of my colleague,
I want to add something.
Yeah.
Are you aware that the current president of Mali, when they were looking for him to kill him,
Yes.
it is in Algeria that hid him. He actually hid in Algeria.
Okay.
Yes, this is the current leader. He was supported
Assimi
by
Goïta.
Algeria, and he hid in Algeria.
No, more so. When you look at what I said this, but maybe it didn't come out the way I wanted it to come out. If you permit me, just
Sure.
Niger, ECOWAS was going to go into Niger and cause a regime, a reversal.
Yes.
And it is Algeria which prevailed again through high-level diplomatic engagement. Some of these things are not talked about.
They're not in public.
High-level diplomatic engagement, the powerful peace broker that Algeria has been, they engaged and prevailed upon ECOWAS not to do what they knew would create bloodshed. And because of that, therefore, the altercation and declaration is, although in muted ways, like recording of ambassadors and now the airspace embargo, is something that must be stopped immediately. And if the Pan-African movement can add its voice physically and otherwise to make sure that these seemingly warring parties come together and we do not create any more trouble in the Sahel region. Because remember, Algeria is in the Maghreb region. Although Mali is an immediate neighbor, it is West Africa. But the kind of level of influence that Algeria has had and Mali has had on each other, the Mali and Algeria, has been very overwhelming. And the relationship they have had, equally overwhelming. The activities, the rebel activities within the Sahel region the country that can claim to have done something is Algeria and not any other. That now we are having a situation where Algeria can be suspected of sponsoring rebel activities, jihadists, the Turaj within the region is but an embarrassment.
Go ahead, comrade.
I think at some point we should also present the argument of both leadership, right? Because we need to hear their voice and what is it that they say about the situation. Because both Malian and Algerian, I believe, have a claim.
Yeah,
they have an interesting claim.
Yeah,
we have to consider their claim.
For Mali.
Yeah.
I'm going to look for the leadership. of Mali.
I want to go first to the history before we discuss those topics, because I think people don't understand the power and the influence of Alger in the 1960s, right? Alger in the 1960s, not only they gave a passport to Mandela, they gave him an office. They gave an office, an entire floor in a building in Alger for all the ANC. Not only the ANC, the African National Congress in power in South Africa, but also the MPLA in power in Angola until today. But also the Frelimo in power in Mozambique until today. Wait for it. Even the ZANU-PF in power until today in Zimbabwe have been having offices, and that was their main office on the African continent for the longest time. And then after they got the independence of Mozambique, independence of Zambia, and they moved back to
including military training and armaments.
Yes, you have that picture of Nelson Mandela. That's the one that gave me goose earlier, because you have Nelson Mandela is really tall, you know, and he has with all those Algerian freedom fighters with like military dress, shorter than him, but like they showing him how to win the war that they won. How did they manage to defeat the French? Is how South Africa should manage to defeat the Afrikaners.
How they managed to win
to bypass the French, because the wedges,
they
the edges of
defeated
the, no, like they defeated, like it was a terrible war for the French people. My grandfather avoided the war. We can speak about that. It was supposed to go.
Him. Martina was not there.
But it's a disaster. Every single French person that was 19 years old in 1958-59 was sent to Algeria. You were 19, you go. So it's
in France?
There is no
by
success.
Force?
By force. Part of the French army too. Fight the freedom fighters of Algeria. There is no pride. There is no pride for a French person in that. Like I know personally, some of my friends' fathers went in those wars. Those guys grew up. My friends grew up in an extremely racist environment, extremely like violent environment. Because when you do a war at 19, you destabilize yourself psychologically. You're not the right person after. The certain noise remind you of bombing and you get aggressive. My personal friends would get beaten by their fathers because sometimes they lose something in their mind because of what they've seen. You can't torture a man, and that's Fanon that told us. You can't torture a man and imagine that will have no impact on you. That is not true. When you dehumanize someone, you dehumanize yourself. If I dehumanize you as a black man, I dehumanize myself because I accept that humanity can be divided. And at the moment you accept that, that's the moment you create like those problems. That's from Frantz Fanon, by the way, the men that were in charge of opening the fifth front line against the French in Mali.
Let me add just on your presentation just a little bit more information. After Algeria, after gaining independence from France in 1962, gaining independence from Mr. Lissafri here, great-grandparents, Algeria became a strong supporter of anti-colonial movements across Africa. Leveraging its own revolutionary experience, Algeria provided political, military, and diplomatic support to several liberation movements. And here are some of those. South Africa was number one. Algeria supported the African National Congress, ANC, and provided military training and logistics for the armed struggle against apartheid. Number two country in Africa was Namibia. Algeria supported the Southwest Africa People's Organization in its fight, called it SWAPO, in its fight for independence from South African rule. Country number three in Africa that Algeria helped was Zimbabwe. Algeria backed the Zimbabwe African National Union, ZANU-PF, and Zimbabwe African People's Union, ZAPU, in their struggle against British colonial rule. Country number four was Mozambique. Algeria supported the Frelimo Mozambique Liberation Front in its war for independence from Portugal. Country number five Algeria helped Angola. It provided support to MPLA, People's Movement for Liberation of Angola, which fought against Portuguese colonial rule and rival liberation movements. Country number 6 was Guinea-Bissau. Algeria assisted PAIGC, African Party for the Independence of Guinea and Cape Verde in its fight against Portuguese colonialism. Country number 7, and the last one, was Congo-Kinshasa by then. Algeria gave moral and logistical support to rebels opposing Western-backed regime after Patrice Lumumba's assassination. Algeria also hosted the headquarters of Organization of African Unity, OAU's Liberation Committee, for some time and served as a training ground for many freedom fighters.
And us, I want to say, us and Pan-African, we speak of Africa, but this is only the African one they help. They help Venezuela, they help Colombia, they help a lot of countries all around the world. They were the capital of the third world. Capital of the third world. Venezuela, Cuba, they were the capital of the third world. Che Guevara himself used to make those presentations there in front of all revolutionary leaders. As a matter of fact, Che Guevara met Africa in Alger. He met Africa in Alger before he started like his operation in Congo and goes from Tanzania and all that, right? So we're speaking only about the African side, but they have a serious credential on the
side of the world.
Yes. In Indonesia they know Algeria. In Venezuela they know Algerians. They know the consistency. The consistency of that policy has been really huge. Consistency of that policy has been really huge towards time. They keep delivering on that, which is also why it is a really uncomfortable topic for us, because as we said, those are two Pan-African brothers that are actually fighting each other. We don't understand where it comes from, but we will bring the argument.
Comrade Rutatina, what people do not understand so easily is that you do not have to be militarily or economically more powerful than your neighbor in order to help. We have had repeated help from Cuba, even when it has over the years been weakened by United States of America economic embargo. But the amount of help that we have gotten from Cuba, including paying with their own blood at the Battle of Cuita Canavaro, including the helping out in that whole area of Angola and Mozambique and South Africa, all that support that we have had, including even recently, the whole economy, like Italy, was being helped by Cuban medical staff. Even when we know that Italy is a member of the G7 and much higher in terms of economic development than Cuba, but it is Cuba that actually saved them when they were dying like flies. You forgive my language, but that's what was happening during COVID. Therefore, when we talk about Algeria as one country on the African continent that was actually extending its tentacles to helping out Venezuela, helping out Cuba, we are not simply happening and being magnanimous on the cameras. We are stating a fact. By saying that, look, how possible is it that this magnanimous Algeria that fought colonialism tooth and nail, that was even ready to deny her independence, regaining of her independence for the benefit of the entire continent, first getting independence, just more or less like what Kwame Nkrumah was saying, that helped out not only in DRC, not only in Guinea, not only in Mali, not only in... How come that even up to today that has been wagging off the rebel activities in the Sahel Republic, that has been fighting to ensure that the people of the Republic of Sahrawi get freedom, how can they lose their guard, let their guard down to be involved in petty squabbles and promoting of rebel activities in the part that neighbors their territory with Mali?
We'll come to
how
that.
Can that be?
Because there is some interesting questions.
Somebody must be brewing trouble for these countries such that we can get the credentials of Algeria or Mali being reported on negatively. Somebody must be interested in what is happening.
Because
and we must
the
move
Sahel
forward.
region. They are seeing the Sahel region
Stabilizing,
yeah.
and the stabilization of the Sahel region
As I
is a
said,
problem.
there's oil, there's gas, there's pipeline coming.
This brother's country here. His brothers in France
involved,
must be doing
involved.
something.
But I would even,
continue with your
I even forgot, like, since we're talking about how the great Algerian, the great history of Algeria, like we also forgot that the nationalization of petrol in Libya, made by Gaddafi, which we always call was the first one, was only the second one because Algeria did it, and not only they nationalized French petrol in Algeria, but then they sent people to explain to Libyan leaders how to nationalize petrol, and it works. So like the success of the nationalization of Libyan petrol is also coming from Algeria. They help. They even came to Senegal to show them like how to liberate themselves from French economic interest. So they would send those ambassadors that come with like pile of documents. You can read the biography of some of them. They're really nice. Piles of documents to explain, okay, the French will trick you like this, they will trick you like that. But if you nationalize that way, if you put a law like this, and then you say USSR will support ABCD, no. You will find solutions to nationalize for yourself, and not for the interest of another global power, not for the interest of the USA or the interest of USSR.
But your interest.
But for your very own sovereignty, that's the way forward. So Gaddafi, we know Gaddafi as a great Pan-African. We know he has a lot of money. We forgot that all of this money came, and he nationalized petrol at 27. So you can imagine at 27 how you're more easy to play. You know, you're more easy to maneuver at 27, right?
So he was guided by Algeria.
Imperialists,
in the background.
exactly. That's what I'm saying. Imperialists could have were trying to play him. Of course, he was rigorous and all that, but the fact that he has the support of Algeria on how to do it definitely made it successful.
And we must be very careful, Mr. Speaker, sir, when we are diagnosing this problem. We must be very careful and remember that actually our enemy is still alive and well. Yeah. And at the same time, he does not like things which are positive on the African continent. It is the same reason as to why, for instance, when the Organization of African Unity was being formed, pre-1963, the enemy still was at the forefront by convincing the emperor of Ethiopia that you are not even a president. You are an emperor, and there is no way you should be joining with these presidents. These are small people, and that is why, in the wisdom of Kwame Nkrumah, he brought on board the emperor, and he proposed, because it was supposed to be the headquarters was supposed to be Central African Republic. He said they diverted and took it to Addis Ababa. Why? Because they wanted to bring Ethiopia on board. Otherwise, Ethiopia was already convinced by the enemy, the imperialist, the former colonialist, that he was not supposed to participate along with other members simply because for him he was at an elevated level. Remember also that the creation of the Casablanca and the Monrovia group, those two camps, was also as a consequence of the enemy, the former colonialist, now the imperialist, who was dividing these, was creating these two camps so that he could weaken the unity of African Union. Remember, the same enemy is the one that ensured that immediately when the Organization of African Unity had taken shape, all those people that had participated in creation of the unity, Amilcar Cabral, Abdul Gamar Nasser, Olympiokos, Ben Bera, even to the extent that even the person who was invited to participate and was a rabid Pan-Africanist, Patrice Lumumba, was assassinated before he could come. All those people, in one way or another, they were eliminated by the enemy. Could it be, from the Pan-African point of view, the same enemy that is penetrating the peace that had been created and was being now spread further in the stabilization of the Sahel region, which it is claimed have got the lowest per capita income, even when they are rich? Could it be the same enemy rebranded now to ensure that the hitherto friends, Algeria, Mali, and the Sahel Republic, the Sahel Confederation, breaks now in two pieces, so that he could maneuver a comeback and recognize? We have got to be very careful. The enemy is alive and well.
No,
Comrade Safri, from your,
I think it's really interesting what is bringing, and I think that's why also we need to bring the arguments of both sides. In the interest of time, if I have to, I will cut we spoke of the 60s of the Algerians, right? But we need to speak of what happened in 1986. What happened in 1986 is that suddenly they have democracy in Algeria, so there's votes, right? And you have the rise of an Islamic movement that is really, really radical, really, really extremist, right? And it turns out that the army is really concerned that this must be the vehicle of foreign interest within the country. So the army stopped the elections and prevent the Islamic leader from winning. It opened a long civil war that will end up only in the early 2000s, a long civil war. But during the 90s, Algerians are fighting the most strongest terrorist movement of its time. Before even Al-Qaeda was in Pakistan and Arabia Saudi doing all the 2001 attack and stuff like this, they were already fighting in Algeria. So the Algerians developed serious, solid secret service and army to find and fight that fight, right? They fought the fight, and first the Islamic moved to the mountains of Algerian coastline, and so they fight them in the mountains. Then they win again, but it takes 5 or 6 years all the time and thousands of lives, right? It was a terrific time for Algerian civilians and soldiers. And then they managed to defeat them in 2002, 2003. They signed some sort of peace treaty. They signed some sort of peace agreement with them, and they pushed them to the Sahara. And so those rebels, those Islamic, will go to the Sahara, and they are in the south, right? And so time passed, the peace agreement is old, and then comes the so-called Arab Spring, right? And now it revitalized those Islamists that were in the Sahara, and because Gaddafi now died, they don't receive support. They don't receive support from Gaddafi and from the Tuaregs anymore. So now those people start to take roots in the gas infrastructure of Algeria in Amenas. In 2013, In Amenas was a shock for Algerians' elite. In Amenas was a shock for Algerian security crisis. You can imagine, like, if tomorrow, let's put forward 10 years. In Uganda, in 10 years, we will have the capacity to produce petrol. Imagine that petrol capacity being attacked by a Congolese rebel movement that sits in Congo. That would be really shocking for Ugandans. That would be highly shocking for security forces, right? So the security forces now to start to have a look at what's happening in the southern borders, because now with the fall of the killing of Gaddafi, once again by the French Secret Service, don't forget that, even if it's not. No, he was there. They shot. DGSC. Yeah.
Gaddafi was killed by the French.
No, definitely. We've spoken about that before. But let's not divert from the point. I just
it was a combination. It was a combination.
Not US, not Obama's people.
No. The meetings, all the meetings were taking place in Paris. Paris was the coordinating center. It was a combination of the French, the Americans, and these other coalitions.
The car of Gaddafi and his phone were sold by the French, because Gaddafi didn't want to buy Americans' product. So we get the geolocalization of Gaddafi from the Thales phone that he was using. But anyway, that's another thing.
Yes.
But it is quite clear.
What is the people who killed Gaddafi?
No, but Gaddafi, they were first.
But comrade,
the bullet. I'm speaking of the bullet. Anyway, the point is what? The point is that when on the side of Alger, it is quite clear that when you are the biggest African country, in terms of size, you do need to have a certain control of your borders, and those borders are absolutely huge, right? So for Algerian securities people, right, it is important that the source is controlled, and it is important that the source is not being overlooked, because remember the French at the independence agreement, which was Evian agreement, they wanted Algerian to sign, but they remain with the Sahara. They said, no, you guys get your independence, but the Sahara remained for us. Because in the Sahara was what? It was the nuclear power, the uranium of Niger that was useful for French nuclear bomb and nuclear power. It was the gas that Total have just started, and Total didn't have gas in France at the time, right? Remember, they got the gas from Algeria. So there were a lot of infrastructure of French capitalism in the region, and they wanted to keep it. So Algerians are really aware that this region is key for the enemies, right? And so whatever the enemies, when they see a drone passing their borders, what they think is that this is also recognitions and this is also a form of spying, right? Would American accept that Chinese come and take pictures?
They shot down the balloon.
They shot down the balloon.
The balloon.
The Americans shot down the balloon. So when that drone goes to Algeria and passes the borders, it is beyond a question of Mali and Algeria. It is also an Algerian question of saying, no, guys, we know that the enemies use all sorts of tricks to get information about that zone, because he knows he can destabilize the whole region from that zone. He can destabilize Alger, he can destabilize Mali, he can destabilize Niger, he can destabilize Burkina Faso, right? So they look at it as it's a key zone. That being said, that is to describe what Algerians must feel towards those incursion of drone. And it is not the first time. It is not the first time. We have spoke about that like a few months ago. It's at least the second or the third incident, right? The two first, they didn't shot the drone. Now they shot the drone, so we know. And the ambassador were called and all that. But it is not the first time. On the size of Mali, Malis have some serious questions. We know that the jihadists, because Sahel is so big, they're not fighting with 4x4 or Toyotas or things like this. They fight with bikes, right? They have a lot of bikes. There's thousands of bikes in the Sahel right now that are used by jihadists to carry like really quick attack.
Reconnaissance.
Even quick attack. They come, 200 of them, bam, bam, bam. They leave really fast. You don't need too much petrol to move troops with that. We have evidence that those bikes, right, Boda, you call them here, similar to Boda, right? They have been bring in the Sahel through Alger as a harbor. They came with in Alger harbor and then they disappear. But we know that the Burkina Faso leadership and Mali leadership have said those borders have to come from somewhere, right? They're not produced here, so they have to come from somewhere. So where do they come from is a question, and what does Alger know about this, right? Second question that Malian authority are asking Alger, and we need clarifications. Why is it that the Tuareg leadership of the Azawad, right, that was fought by the Malians, that was fought after by the French and the Malians together, what is it that they are in Alger? Why do they do in Alger? Why is it that they can walk freely in Alger? And why is it that they seem to be receiving protection in Alger? Why is it that the leadership has the capacity to move around in Alger? We need to clarify that. There is no embassy, there is no direct link between your government and those people. Why is it that we have pictures and evidence of that leadership? I don't have the name exactly, but there is the leadership of the Azawad movement. Why is it that they have access to Alger? Why is it? How do you justify that? Is it that you have to explain to us, right? And I think those are the two elements. In one side, Alger really need to protect that region because it knows it's a key geostrategic region for its own economic and for the interest of its enemies. But on the other side, the Malians and the Burkinabe and the Niger need to know where does those weapons come from? Who like physically? Which role do they take? Who is aware of that? And I cannot believe, personally, I cannot believe that Algerian Secret Service would not know what's happening in their territory. Algerian Secret Service are huge, gigantic, they're really good because of the war. You know, when Secret Service are born in war, they are much more efficient than if they are born out of having to spy your opponent or things like this, you know?
There is also something very critical, Comrade Tatina here, which I would wish our public to understand. There has been an accusation, and I want to believe maybe this is just media hype. If not, and genuinely it has come from our brothers from Mali, then it is very sad and unfortunate. They claim that Algeria could be supporting the Tuareg. The Tuareg people who are more or less brown, and they tend to look like the ones from Algeria. So the support is on account of color. They're more or less Algerians. I want to dismiss that with the contempt that it deserves. Why? Algeria is on record for supporting people who don't look like them. In South Africa, who looked like the Algerians. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, who looked like the Algerian. In Guinea-Bissau, who looked like the Algerian. In Mozambique and Angola, who looked like the Algerian. In all that we have talked about and more, nobody looked like the Algerian. To want to water down the Pan-African credentials of Algeria. And I'm not saying the Algerians are miracle workers or they are angels. They may be having their own problems. But we must respect that has been earned respectfully and through blood and iron.
And
the Algerians have got a history, and that history cannot simply be washed away on account of color, because that's not what the Algerian, at least history proves them right, that they are beyond color and they are true Pan-Africanists and humanists.
Thank you very much. Comrade Lisafre, in your, if you could wind up
remarks, eh?
Yes.
To round up the remarks.
You had the presentation.
Some of my Pan-African friends have told me that I only quote males, right? So I also want to remind people that Miriam Makeba was here, Nina Simon was in Alger, Miriam Makeba was in Alger, Maya Angelou was in Alger, and what's the last one? Ousmane Sambene. That's a man, but the famous first African movie producer, autonomous African movie producer. They were all supported by Alger, and so also in the sphere of art and culture, they did support the continent, right? The black artists as well. They were never that divide that people must claim, or some people claim. But it is clear that they need to have some talk, especially regarding joint operation on the borders. Okay, which material do we use? Because otherwise the terrorists or the Tuaregs, call them as you want, they will use those things. You pass the border, then the guys that are following you can't pass, and when those guys come south, now you go to the other side of the borders and you play with borders against the sovereignty of those states, right?
Thank you very much, Comrade Lisafre Mutatina. Comrade Mutatina is a senior journalist and researcher. He has actually taught in South African universities. And then he's also a recipient of the Pan-African Pyramid Global Award. He's actually a recipient of that award of the class 2024. And so his skin has got nothing to do with his ideology. Very undoubtedly Pan-African. I believe in him. I trust your works.
Thank you.
I thank you so much for giving us your time every Monday. Yeah? Comrade Rugarama Daniel Karuchiko. Rugarama Karuchiko is actually a civil rights lawyer. He's a lawyer by profession, but also he's a chairman of the Pan-African movement, the Ugandan chapter. My name is Andrew Rumba Katusebe, your speaker every Monday. We are at Satellite Hotel. Wait for this show on Saturday on NBS Television, our media partner, and the Spy Television. Follow us on our social media platform. The YouTube channel is Pan-African Pyramid. Share, like, comment, recommend our show, love our show. Please support our efforts to a total liberation of Africa.